A hymn by William Whiting. Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arms does bind the restless wave, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. O hear us when we cry to thee for those in peril on the sea. O Savior, whose almighty word the winds and waves submissive heard, who walked upon the foaming deep and calm amid the rage did sleep. O hear us when we cry to thee for those in peril on the sea. O Holy Spirit, who did brood upon the waters dark and rude, and bid their angry tumult cease, and give for wild confusion peace. O hear us when we cry to thee for those in peril on the sea. O Trinity of love and power, your children shield in danger's hour. From rock and tempest, fire and foe, protect them wheresoever they go. Thus evermore shall rise to thee glad hymns of praise from land and sea, for those in peril on the sea.
I'm Darlene.
And I'm Melody.
This is Hard Times and True Crimes.
So we just wanted to give a shout out to all of our listeners. We have been getting a lot of good feedback.
Yes.
And we have had several people sending us suggestions either through our socials, our email, and our website. Mm-hmm. And so we just wanted to thank you all for those. We always love getting those.
Mm-hmm. We're actually researching, and you'll be hearing some of the stories from those suggestions in upcoming episodes.
Yep. So keep them coming. We always love to get them.
Yes.
What are you drinking?
Water.
Me too. So it is the middle of the day now, and we're done with our coffee. So water
Menopause.
it is.
We can't drink coffee too late anymore.
Exactly. Well, Darlene, let's just jump right into this episode. I feel like you probably have heard this one before because it's not obscure.
Okay.
I mean, it's been done. There had been episodes of 48 Hours about it and an episode on 2020 about it.
Okay.
But it still was a really sad story, so I wanted to go ahead and share it.
Okay.
Let's go to Newport Beach, California.
All right.
In southern Orange County. Newport Beach is between LA and San Diego. It's an area populated by a lot of wealthy families. It's known for its beautiful sandy beaches and abundant water sports, which always come with nice sandy beaches.
Sandy beaches. Mm-hmm.
And Newport Beach has one of the largest recreational boat harbors on the West Coast. So in that harbor, Tom and Jackie Hawks had a boat called the Well Deserved.
Oh, were they retired?
They were this sweet married couple. They were in love and they were enjoying their early retirement.
Yeah.
And they were docking their boat at that Newport Harbor in 2004. For over 2 years, they had actually been living on that boat, living the dream.
That's cool.
So Tom Hawks, he grew up on a farm with his brother Jim and their parents. And these were all American boys. You know, they surfed. They did their water sports. Tom, he had those American good looks. Let me tell you, when you see his pictures, he is a good-looking guy. And he enjoyed fitness, bodybuilding. He stayed in shape. He was actually an Arizona arm wrestling champion.
Oh, cool.
Yep. And he had competed in amateur bodybuilding contests even up into his early 50s.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was keeping it together.
Yeah.
But before that, as a young adult, he had joined the Air Force, and then he ended up serving in Vietnam. And he actually came from like a law enforcement family. Brother was actually a police officer and then later a police chief.
Okay.
And Tom himself, once he got out of the military, he became a probation officer. And so that was just, their whole family was kind of a law enforcement kind of family.
Yeah.
Tom married, and he had 2 sons, Matthew and Ryan. That marriage came to an end. And the couple divorced when the boys were still fairly young. And it was not a bitter divorce. It was pretty amicable.
Okay.
However, the boys mostly lived with Tom. And so he was kind of raising them on his own until one day when he met Jackie O'Neill.
Oh.
They met at a chili cook-off
Oh.
in 1986. And they hit it off. she was into fitness too. She liked to go into the gym. And so, they started seeing each other. And before long, they were really almost inseparable. They wed in 1989. And when they did, Tom's boys were both in elementary school. And they liked Jackie. They grew close with her. And so they had this tight-knit family. Now, Jackie did not have any other children of her own. She had been married before, but prior to meeting Tom, she and her husband actually had a really bad motorcycle accident, and he was killed.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, and she barely survived herself. And so she had some internal injuries that prevented her from having children.
Okay.
But now she's married Tom, and he's got these boys, and so,
Built-in family.
Yeah, she's getting a built-in family there. They actually called her mom, even though their mom was still living. So, it doesn't always happen when you have, step parents and stuff, but they took right to her.
One of Memphis's friends yesterday was talking to me. She just lost her mother and stepfather in a car accident.
Oh.
Like just this summer.
Oh.
And she said, thankfully, she still has her dad and stepmom. She said, we had 4 parents. She was like, we loved our step parents.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, I mean,
because,
I don't know.
Yeah, not everybody has that experience with step parents. I didn't.
Right. Exactly. So it sounds like this was like that. Like
exactly.
Sounds like they love their stepmom.
Yeah. So over the years, Tom's not making a killing being a probation officer. He does it for reasons other than just a lot of money.
Sure.
But he's good with money.
Yeah.
And so he's good at saving, and he's made a couple of real estate investments, and he actually gets to the point where he can retire early.
Wow.
And so Jackie's on board with that. Now, she's 10 years younger than him.
Okay.
But when he was in his early 50s, he retired.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. He's doing all right then.
He did. And so he wants to buy a yacht and live on that boat and spend his days sailing and enjoying life. And that's what they did.
I love that.
Yeah. Now my husband's getting ready to retire.
Yes.
Not early, but early. I mean, like he's earlier than full retirement age.
Right.
And so we're looking forward to that.
I'm excited for y'all.
Yeah. In November of 2000, Tom found the boat, the one that's going to let them live their dream. As I've already told you, it was called the Well-Deserved. It was already named that. And that was kind of the perfect name for it.
Yeah.
If anybody deserved it and had worked hard, it was him. This was a nice boat. It had 2 decks, 2 bedrooms, a galley, 2 bathrooms. And inside, the interior was like hand-carved teak.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And it was a 55-foot trawler, and they purchased it for $300,000. And then they spent quite a bit more, like doing some updates in it and adding some, like a special GPS unit and a generator, stuff like that.
Okay.
For a few years, they were just enjoying that life, taking trips from Newport Beach to up and down the coast to Catalina Island. They would go to Mexico and go to the Sea of Cortez, just really anywhere they wanted to go.
Yeah.
But then came the day that they got some news that would change their retirement plans a little bit. Not bad news, though.
Oh.
Their son, Matt, and his wife, Nicole, were going to have a baby.
Okay. I can relate. They wanted to be close to that baby.
Yep, that first grandbaby. And Jackie, she was all about it. She couldn't have kids of her own, but now here comes this baby. So she really was looking forward to being a grandma.
Yes.
And so they decided, well, let's just sell the boat, downsize. We'll still get a boat, but we'll just put it in a dock and we'll get us a small house in Mexico. And that way, the baby, Matt and Nicole and the baby lived in Arizona, but they were close enough they could make that drive and just be, more accessible. So in November of 2004, they placed an ad in a boating magazine called Sports Fishing. The ad said, 1980 55-foot lean trawler, huge aft cockpit, full displacement, bulbous bow, stabilized, set up for long-range cruising, immaculate, and it was. Featured in Lat and At's December 2003. On mooring in Newport Beach, California. May sell mooring with boat. Offer/trades considered.
Wow, okay. Sounds nice.
I'm not a boater, so there were a lot of things in that description that I have no idea what they meant, but any boating enthusiast will.
I recognize the trawling from another episode that I did.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Fishing lines.
Okay. So before long, they did have someone interested in the boat. And so they went out to meet this young man named Skylar De Leon. He had a friend with him, and Tom was a little bit suspicious of this guy because he was young. He didn't really seem to be somebody who could afford a boat.
Right.
I mean, it had taken Tom a pretty long time to get the money to buy the boat, and now he was selling it for a lot more. I think he was asking $485,000.
Okay.
So he's wondering, how's this guy going to afford this?
Right.
But Skylar assured Tom he could afford it because, as it turns out, he said he had made a couple of good real estate deals himself.
Okay.
And he was a childhood actor who had been on the Mighty Morphin's Power Rangers show.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. And it does happen. I mean, sometimes kids have more money than...
Yeah. I mean, he could have come from money.
Yeah.
But he assured him he definitely had the cash for the boat. And not only that, he told him about he had a pregnant wife and a baby girl named Haley.
Oh.
It's going to be a great blessing for their family.
Yeah.
Well, Skylar called his wife Jennifer to come down and meet the Hawkses, Tom and Jackie Hawks. Once Jackie saw that baby, she was kind of sold. Like, this young couple. I mean, the whole reason she's selling the boat is to go be around the grandbaby. So she's kind of like, she's sold on like, yeah, we want to sell them the boat. I'm sure they connected over the baby situation.
Sure.
So they made the agreement, and the Hawkses took one last trip with Tom's brother Jim and his wife over to Catalina Island before they were going to part with the well-deserved. Jackie even filmed their last evening together on the yacht that had been her home for a couple of years, and that sale was going to be finalized in a few more days. So there's footage of them just hanging out, having dinner on the boat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
On November 15th, Tom and Jackie planned to meet Skylar and take the boat out for a test drive and just kind of run him through all the stuff and show him how to use it.
Right.
Jackie left a friend a voicemail about that. And she said they were going to go out and do this, but she would be in touch later that day. But she never did get back in touch that day with her friend. And then nobody could reach Tom and Jackie after that, which was, a little bit odd.
Yeah.
When the Sons couldn't reach them, they began to get uneasy. But it wasn't out of the question that Tom and Jackie may have taken some impromptu last-minute trip.
Sure.
But the boys, Ryan and Matthew, they did call Uncle Jim, who was the former police chief.
Okay.
And Jim agreed to drive out to the harbor and check on things.
Okay.
So Jim and a friend go down there, and they do see the well-deserved, the boats there. But Tom and Jackie were nowhere around. Their car was not there. So again, they could have just gone out.
Right.
Or gone somewhere on a car trip, impromptu. But Jim noticed right away that the dinghy from the big boat, it was tied to the dock, but the motor was still in the water. The tarps around the boat were kind of not really put back in place. And that didn't line up with the way Tom maintained his equipment and his boat and any of his things.
Okay.
So Jim did feel like, that's not quite right. He also noticed that the yacht had some things amiss. There was a towel hanging out of one of the portholes. So Jim's police intuition was in full force.
Right.
He actually told his friend at that point, be careful about what he touched. He said, we probably should treat this like a crime scene.
Oh, gosh.
Now, again, a police chief, their mind is always going to go to that worst case scenario. They're trained to think that way.
Now, is that his brother?
And it is his brother.
Oh, okay.
But who knows you more than your brother? And so he knew that this is not looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jackie had also told her friend Trisha that they had a buyer and that the buyers were coming the next day to take a test drive on that boat. Well, Jim wrote his contact information on a business card. He said, I'm a retired police chief. This couple is missing, and we want to talk with who bought the boat. And he just left it on the boat. And what do you know? Somebody called him. A woman by the name of Jennifer De Leon. And she told Jim that she and her husband, Skylar, had bought the boat 10 days earlier. And she said they had paid for it in cash. And she said, in fact, she was actually looking for the Hawkses herself because they needed to talk to Tom. They needed to know how to change the fuel tank. She told him when he asked her, well, when did you see them last? She was like, well, they drove away after we did the deal. They said something about they were going to go to Mexico, and they drove away, and we haven't been able to get in contact with them. Jim calls Tom and Jackie's friend Patricia, who lives in Arizona. Patricia had been handling the Hawks' finances. Mm-hmm. Because when you're out on the boat, it's not always easy to get internet access and you can't just do all that stuff online easily when you're out in the ocean. And so she did that for them back in Arizona. Jackie had actually told her about having a buyer and going out on the test drive.
Okay.
She decided to do some checking, and she found that nobody had deposited any funds at the bank at the Hawkses Bank. And she knew if they had sold that boat, there would have been a deposit. They're not going to be carrying a bunch of cash down to Mexico just on their person. So with all of that information building up, Tom's brother Jim filed a missing persons report on 57-year-old Tom and 47-year-old Jackie. They had been missing for 11 days when Jim made that report on November 26th. Since he had done so much of the legwork already, from the get-go, the investigation was in full swing. And of course, they started with the last known people to have seen Tom and Jackie, which were Skylar and Jennifer De Leon, the buyers of the yacht. When officers looked into Skylar's history, they found a previous charge of armed burglary, which he was currently on probation for.
Interesting.
And of course, that raised a red flag. And there were more red flags to come. Besides being a felon, who was Skylar De Leon is what they wanted to know.
Right.
Well, Skylar had not always been Skylar. He had been born John Julius Jacobson. He came from a pretty rough background in childhood. His parents had divorced when he was pretty young, and he lived mostly with his father, and his dad really was just not a great guy. He was actually a pretty horrible guy. He was abusive to Skylar. Now, Skylar has said that, and other people have also confirmed that. He was a drug dealer. Some people reported that he got Skylar into that acting gig so he could profit off of him.
Okay.
And John Jacobson / Skylar, he didn't really even enjoy the acting. He struggled with learning his lines. Sometimes he'd get yelled at on set, and his dad would be yelling at him. I mean, I'm sure that is rough on a kid who didn't even want to be there. And as it turns out, he was not a major character on that show, as he had led people to believe.
Okay.
Including Tom. He had been an extra in like 3 episodes.
Oh, poo.
And maybe done like a commercial or 2.
Okay.
And that was it. But he never felt like he was good enough for his dad. And so he was just always trying to overcome that. So when John / Skylar was old enough, he joined the Marines, and he claimed that he was a Marine Corps Force Recon, which is this elite group.
I feel like that if they say that, they're just automatically lying.
Right, because why have to brag about it?
Yes.
Exactly. He was wanting to impress people, especially his dad. He even had a special tattoo put on his back that signified he was in that elite force.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And in reality, as you've already guessed, he did join the Marines.
Right.
But then within just a few weeks, he had already gone AWOL. And by the time they caught up with him, later they discharged him with a less than honorable discharge.
Okay.
Yeah. So all that stuff about that special unit was just baloney. If Skylar was accomplished at nothing else, he was a very accomplished liar.
Liar? Yeah.
So when he got out of the military, he changed his name from John to Skylar. And he said that was because he had no desire to be associated with his dad at all.
Okay.
So instead of John Julius Jacobson, he changed it to Skylar De Leon. Something as different as possible as he could get. Then Skylar met Jennifer Henderson. Now, Jennifer, she came from a good home, a church-going family, 2 caring parents. I don't know that they were wealthy, but they weren't poor. They definitely had, enough money. And when she met Skylar, they met online.
Okay.
And they were both interested, and eventually they decided they were going to meet in person. And that was it. From that point on, they were gung-ho for each other. And within a year, he had proposed, and they were married not long after. Jennifer said they actually had 2 weddings, a small casual one with just like their intimate friends and family, and then later they had a big formal one.
Okay.
Now, at this time, Jennifer was working as a hairstylist. She was only making like $21,000 a year. And she said he had a job as an electrician, but he hadn't started it yet. So he didn't actually have a job.
Right.
And 9 months after the wedding, they had their little girl, Haley. And not long after that, they were pregnant again.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, this was also a struggling young couple financially. They were actually living in the garage next to her parents' house, and they were like $90,000 in debt.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
How does that even happen?
I know. And I'm talking credit card debt.
Oh, no.
And he had bought her like a $10,000 engagement ring. That wedding itself was they had 2 weddings. If
Why do
if you
people
can't
do
manage your
that?
money, just have the small one. But they had this
Right.
big formal wedding, which I know her parents probably would have paid the bill for, but I mean, just not great money
Yeah.
management skills going on here. So they are in a lot of debt living in her parents' garage.
Hmm.
And that garage doesn't have, I think, a bathroom or a kitchen. So they have to go to the main house for that.
I bet her parents are just loving him.
Oh, can you imagine?
No.
Oh, me either. You can imagine as the detectives are finding out these things about the
Right.
De Leons, and they're really doing some investigating. On November 27th, they got a search warrant for the boat. And they had to get a search warrant because they were told that it was sold to the De Leons.
Okay. So just in case.
Yeah. So when they searched it, it was in disarray, as I had already told you. And Jim told those investigators, no, Tom did not leave his stuff like this. There was a towel hanging out from one of the portholes. Tarps were askew. An anchor was missing. So one of the leads in this case, it was one of the lead prosecutors, Matt Murphy. He had a friend who was an expert on like boating things. And so he said, well, with a boat that size, there should be 2 anchors. Sure enough, they only found one during their investigation. So they knew that there was likely one missing.
Okay.
So just some weird stuff. And they happened to find a Target receipt that was dated on November 17th. And what was bought at Target was bleach,
Oh gosh.
trash bags, and Tums. The detective I saw on one of the TV interviews was saying it was a kill kit. And he said, obviously the bleach and the trash bags, but he said the Tum maybe to settle if somebody has a conscience, to settle your stomach from committing murder. But my first thought was the only time I've ever used Tums was when I was pregnant.
Oh.
And
yeah.
Jennifer's pregnant. So I'm thinking maybe the bleach and the trash bags were for cleaning up something, but those Tums were probably for a certain pregnant person.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So they went to Target. They pulled that footage, expecting to see maybe a pregnant woman or Skylar. But instead, it was like on the footage is this guy whom they didn't know who that was, just like this kind of heavy-set dude.
Huh.
And they're like, just what you just said. It was a man that they didn't know yet. So they had to do more digging, and it turned out that was Steve Henderson, Jennifer's father. So they go to his house, and they wanted to speak to him. And he's like, oh, yeah, I did go do that. My daughter bought a boat, and she sent me over there to buy some stuff to clean it up. She had told him it was to clean up their new boat.
Okay.
At that point, I was wondering if the dad had questions about how they could afford the boat.
Yeah.
Because they had to bail them out financially already. They had loaned them money, and they're living in their garage. So
Right.
I don't know if I would be thinking,
But if he's a good liar, there's just no telling.
yeah, and probably they're wanting them out of their garage too.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll go buy the trash bags.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I want to know where these poor people are.
Oh. They said, well, how can we reach Jennifer and Skylar? And it just so happened at that moment, Jennifer and Skylar, he said, well, they're just right down the street. They're over there helping clean the church. So detectives headed over there. They get Jennifer and they say, hey, we're trying to locate the Hawks. And she's very concerned. And she says, well, I want to reach them too because they left a lot of personal items on our boat and we just don't know how to get them back to them or what they want us to do with them. And when they spoke to Skylar, he actually was able to produce documents showing that they had made that purchase. And those documents were signed by Tom and Jackie, and they were notarized, and it all appeared to be very legitimate. They were thinking, okay, well, maybe we're barking up the wrong tree. Maybe there's
Right.
something else going on we don't know yet. On November 30th, they had Skylar come down to the police department to answer some questions, and he readily agreed. And he even showed up with his little baby Haley with him. At that talk, he told the detectives that he had never taken the boat out of the harbor. He said they had made a deal in the parking lot right there at the back of the car on the trunk, and he had brought cash in a briefcase. And he said, that made Tom a little nervous having all that money in cash, but he readily accepted it. They're saying, well, okay, how are you affording to pay cash for this boat?
Right.
And Skylar, he comes clean. He says, okay, so if you look at me, you're going to find a burglary charge on my record, and this money is actually from dealing drugs. I mean, he's very forthright about that. And he expressed his desire, like, okay, but I've got this wife and baby. I got a baby on the way. I'm trying to clean my life up, and I'm trying to get us out of this garage apartment. It is drug money, but that's what I'm just trying to make it right now. But then they said, but we also have questions about this one document that you've given us. because I told you he had those legal documents. You've given us this power of attorney where the Hawkses have turned over power of attorney of all of their assets to you and Jennifer. And that's a little odd. So how do you explain them doing that with a stranger when they have such a tight-knit family?
Right. Oh my gosh. He had a thing. Okay.
He had a power of attorney signed by them,
Okay.
notarized. And the cops are saying, can you explain that? And they said, and by the way, we also have video footage of you going to their bank, you and your wife, trying to withdraw a large sum of money. So can you explain those two things? And Skylar actually did have an explanation.
Okay. Sure he did.
He explained that Tom had already told him he was going to buy a house in Mexico. And it's not easy to open an account in Mexico if you're not a citizen. You can't just go over there and open a bank account. Skylar explained, well, he actually has Mexican lineage and he's a dual citizen. And so he had told Tom, hey, I can help you do all of that. You gave me such a great deal on the boat. If you just want to transfer that power of attorney over to me, I can help you get the account set up and maybe purchase some real estate since you don't have the authority to do that yet there. Okay, Skylar is a good liar, but you know they were not buying that.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
Investigators bring in Kathleen Harris. She was the notary who notarized the documents. Kathleen is a professional. She doesn't have any past history of anything illegal. And she's confirming Skylar's account. She says Tom and Jackie had appeared before her in person to sign the documents. And the police are thinking she cannot be telling the truth.
Right.
And she's sitting there saying, I'm telling you the truth. That is how it happened. Yes, they came in. She signed. He signed. It's all out there. Well, they finally got pretty aggressive with her. And she stuck to her story. She said, that is the truth.
Okay.
But the next day, she came back to the police headquarters with an attorney and admitted that neither Tom nor Jackie signed to those documents in front of her. She said that Skylar had paid her quite a bit extra to lie and say they were there and to backdate the documents.
Oh.
And another person that officers wanted to speak to was a witness that was on that bill of sale. His name was Alonzo Machang. Now, Alonzo had met Skylar while Skylar was incarcerated for the burglary. But Alonzo wasn't in there. He was a jailer.
Okay.
He had backed up that story about the notarizing too. But now they know he's lying because Kathleen just outed him. But he doesn't really give them much more, and everything is given them. They know it's a lie.
Right.
And they still haven't found the car. They were looking for the 1998 Honda CRV that had Arizona plate. Finally, they decide, well, we're going to have to go to the media. So they do. And so the news station starts, showing pictures of the car and telling what it is. Mm-hmm. And they start getting calls in. And this woman calls in and she says, I'm looking at that car right now.
Oh.
So she snaps a picture of it and sends it to investigators. And they're like, yeah, that's it. That's the car. It had their plates and everything. She was in Mexico, but they did have this one glimmer of hope. Well, maybe they did drive down to Mexico and nobody's just seen them yet. So they head down to Mexico to where the car is at. And they get there and they speak to the person at the house where the car was. And he's like, oh, no, that's not my car. It belongs to a friend. You want to guess who his friend is?
Oh, Skylar, yes. Oh, no.
Yep. And at that point, detectives say they knew at that point that the Hawkses were dead. Mm. Like something has happened to them.
Yeah.
And then on December 17th, officers got a tip from Skylar's parole officer that he had asked permission to leave the country. They're thinking, okay, he's a flight risk. We need to act, but they don't have enough to arrest him yet. Yeah. But they decide, okay, well, we're going to arrest him on suspicion of money laundering because he already had admitted that money was drugs, if there had really been any money. And so when they told him what he was charged with, he actually looked visibly relieved. And then they got a warrant and they searched his and Jennifer's garage apartment and they found the Hawkses' laptops, their cell phone batteries. And believe it or not, they find like a video camera with this tape in there. And it's that tape that Jackie had made of when they were taking their last voyage out on the boat. Mm. That last footage of saying, okay, this is our last voyage on the well-deserved. So sad. But what's even worse than that, then the tape kind of cuts quickly to footage of Skylar and Jennifer's Thanksgiving with their family.
Huh?
They had taped on the same exact tape, using their equipment, their family memories on Tom and Jackie's tape of family memories.
That is weird.
Yeah. And stupid, too, if you want. I mean,
Yeah.
it's weird and like, how could you? But also very stupid.
Yes.
And they had it in their apartment. They come back to Alonzo McChain, and they tell him what they know now.
Right.
Alonzo starts talking because he realizes, the jig is up. I'm going to save my own butt.
Yeah.
And he tells officers exactly what they want to know and what went down. And I'm going to give this graphic warning because what he told the officers is really hard to hear. I mean, it's just hard. So here's what happened to the Hawkses. When Alonzo met Skylar in jail, he told that he killed bad people for money. Mm-hmm. He's like, but they're bad people, so I'm just keeping money that's already bad. And he's like, you want to make $1 million? You can help me. I'm targeting this couple, and I'm going to steal their boat. And he was showing him pictures of the boat and everything. And Alonzo agreed to it. And as I outlined earlier, they went to meet Tom, and Tom was a little suspicious about Skylar at that point.
Yeah.
And so the whole reason Skylar called Jennifer to come with the baby was to put him at ease.
So sad.
Yeah. And Skylar and Alonzo were not really big guys, but remember, I told you Tom was a big guy. He wasn't real tall, but he was muscular, and he was very fit. I mean, even Jackie had video footage of him on the boat doing pull-ups on the side, and he actually wrote an article for this sporting magazine about how to stay fit when you're out on a boat sailing and not near a gym, and he was not going to be easy to overpower.
No.
They knew that he could overpower them, and they were going to need a third man. They needed some muscle. And that someone was a man named John F. Kennedy. Yes, you heard me right. John F. Kennedy.
Okay.
This John Kennedy was not famous for being a president. He was one of the original founding members of the Long Beach Insane Crips.
Oh, gosh.
John was a big dude. He came along with Skylar and Alonzo to that test drive. And he was wearing a suit, and they claimed that he was Skylar's accountant. All 5 of them board the boat on the day of the test drive. Alonzo, Skylar, and John Kennedy, and Tom and Jackie. And they head out. Once they get in the water and away from the shore, Skylar goes down below deck. And a bit later, John Kennedy says, well, I'm feeling seasick. And so he goes down there to join him. But then they don't come back up. And so Tom goes down there to check, like, what are they doing? What's going on? And when he goes down, they attack Tom. There's a scuffle. They're choking him. And Jackie can hear that from upstairs.
Oh, my gosh.
So she looks down the steps and she sees what's happening. And at this point, Alonzo restrains her. He actually uses a taser on her. I don't know that the taser really worked that well, but he still was able to overpower her, and he handcuffs Jackie. Kennedy is choking Tom, and he manages to restrain him with handcuffs. And then they bring Jackie down there with him, and they put the two together on the bed. And all this time, Jackie's pleading for her life. And and she's asking Skylar, how could you do this to us? We trusted you.
Oh, that makes me so sad.
And then, this is horrible. They put duct tape over their eyes and their mouths. It is just heart-wrenching to me to think of what is going through their minds.
Yeah.
That, when I saw this episode for the first time on, I think it was 2020, that just stuck with me. Like, how horrible. Tom, is trying to comfort Jackie, but they can't see each other. They can't speak. He's just kind of stroking her hands, trying to comfort her. And that's when they were forced to sign the documents about signing the boat over. They pulled enough tape off so they could see and made them sign them. And they told them, okay, if you cooperate, you're not going to be harmed. And so, they signed those documents under duress. Now, Jackie did have the presence of mind. She changed her signature a little bit. Their last name is Hawks with an S, but she wrote her name as Hawk. She didn't put the S on it. Somebody later went in and added that S, but it wasn't the way she signed her name. It was like a printed S and not a cursive S attached to the name. So they knew it wasn't hers. So she knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And she was trying to make sure they got them.
Yeah.
Now that the Hawkses are restrained, they go out to the deepest part toward Catalina Island, where Tom and Jackie had just spent their last cruise with their family days before, where they had shared so many good memories. And Skylar starts getting the anchor, a 66-pound anchor, and he's going to tie the couple to it.
Oh, my gosh.
Tom is a fighter, and he's not going to go down easily.
Right.
So when he hears the anchor in the chain, because again, remember, he has duct tape over his eyes. When he hears that, he gives it one last shot and he kicks backward and he connects with Skylar.
Good.
Yes. He kicks him so hard in the groin that Skylar almost goes overboard.
Oh, I wish he would have.
Me too. And he lands on his back. But I guess that maybe made him mad because, that had to hurt. So Skylar then just throws the anchor overboard and the couple's attached to it. And as it unwinds and feeds off of the line, it sinks into the ocean, all the while pulling the couple toward the edge. Jackie is slammed into the side of the yacht as the two are pulled into the ocean fully alive.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, cold-blooded.
Oh, that's terrible.
Horrifying.
No,
It's
I cannot imagine that.
Even if you're going to con this family and steal their boat, could you not just do something easy that shoot them?
Right.
Why put them through that? That's horrible.
Oh, that's terrible.
And if that's not cold-blooded enough, Skylar gives a whoop, leans overboard,
Oh
and
my
watches
gosh.
until the water is completely still. Pure evil.
Oh my gosh.
And Alonzo said he's calm. He's acting as if it's no big deal. And then he calls Jennifer and tells her the deed is done. And she asks, "Are you sure?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm sure."
What monsters? Her too.
Yep. These people have no conscience.
No, none of them.
Mm-mm. Kennedy, the big muscle guy, he grabs a beer and he decides to go fishing on the way back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Just so unfeeling. So, once Alonzo's story is put out there, officers now do have more charges for Skylar,
Yeah.
and he would now face trial for the murder of 2 innocent people. And he had really thought he was going to get away with it because he had bragged once to a friend about other crimes like, oh, if there's no bodies, there's no crime.
God. I wonder if he had done that before. Anything like that. I mean, surely.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
4 months after Skylar's arrest, so Jennifer, she was age 23. She's still out, had her baby. They had not yet had anything to arrest her for. I mean, she wasn't there. They didn't have a lot of evidence on her. And she was sticking to their story that Skylar didn't do this. She's still trying to lie. Officers didn't know the extent of her involvement yet. They didn't know, she just a wife that got caught up in her husband's crimes. They're not sure. So they offered her a deal with complete immunity in exchange for her testimony against Skylar.
I hope she didn't do it.
She didn't.
Good.
I mean, that's a good deal. And
That's such a good deal, and I'm so glad she didn't
I
take
know.
it.
And she turned
It was
it.
too good for her.
It was. And she not only turned it down once, she turned it down twice.
What an idiot.
Yep. She stuck with her husband. He actually had somewhat turned on her, and he was accusing her of being the planner. And she might have been the planner. She was the kind of person, she wanted nice things. She wanted to get out of her parents' garage. And she's got 2 babies now, and she's like, I want the good life, right? And so she might have put pressure on Skylar to make it happen. She certainly played a key role.
Yeah.
So she was arrested in April of 2005.
Good.
And she was charged with first-degree murder for financial gain, even though she wasn't even present at the murders. And she actually goes on trial first. Her defense tried to paint her as being forced into it, being terrified of him.
Mm-mm.
But the evidence was showing a plotting mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
Some even thought that Skylar was acting on her word for much of this. They said he called Jennifer before he ever made a move. And records show that he called her 15 times during that time that he was away.
Wow.
Yeah, committing the murders 15 times. And even that bank footage when they went in to try to get money out of the Hawks'
Yes.
bank account, you can clearly see while she's standing there, she has a smile on her face.
Are you serious?
She does. So she's really just as cold as him.
Oh, yeah.
Jennifer De Leon was found guilty of the murders
Good.
and given 2 life sentences without
I'm
parole.
so glad.
Yep. While Skylar was awaiting for his trial, he did something crazy. He was rushed to the hospital for trying to cut off his penis
Oh, my gosh.
with a razor blade.
Oh, my gosh. Was he trying to be crazy or something?
No.
Okay.
He said he had always felt like a woman and he had wanted this for a long time. So he wrapped a sheet around it and then tried to cut it off.
Oh my gosh.
Remember when he changed his name from John to Skylar?
Yes.
Well, there was much more to that than just not wanting to be associated with his father.
Okay.
It turns out he had made a deposit of $500 for a sex change surgery before he committed the murders. And investigators wondered if that might be part of his motive for the killings.
Oh my, what the crap?
Right? Trial testimony shows that he had an appointment on he was expecting to get a sex change surgery on November 30th of that year.
Did his wife know?
Glad you asked. Even while he was married to Jennifer, he would wear women's clothing. He claimed he was born a hermaphrodite. And once he told her he needed a sex change because he had cancer, he said his uterus was growing and becoming cancerous. Fortunately, they interrupted his attempt at castigating himself, and they got his butt in there to face charges for his crimes.
Good.
And if you think you've heard all the surprises about Skylar De Leon, you have not. When he was charged with the murders of Tom and Jackie, he was also charged with a third murder of a man named John Jarvie, which had happened the year before the Tom and Jackie's murder. This one had happened in 2003.
Wow.
Skylar had met Jarvie in prison, as is the way with Skylar, and he told him a bunch of bull crap about how he had various investments and just a bunch of lies.
You're right.
And he said, well, when I get out, I'll help you make some investments too. And he must have been convincing. I mean, he must have been a really good manipulator.
Yeah.
So when Jarvie was released, before Skylar, he made a deal with him. And Skylar's on this work release while he's incarcerated for the burglaries.
Okay.
And where he can leave during the day and come back at night. And you have to actually pay for that. And his in-laws paid $2,100 for him to do that.
Wow.
And while he's out on his work release, so he tells Jarvie, hey, let's meet up. We're going to go down to Mexico and do this deal. Bring $50,000 cash for your part of the investment. John Jarvie does do that. So Jennifer had a cousin named Michael who went with them too. They drove down there. Skylar led Jarvie down into this ravine and slits his throat.
Oh my gosh.
Took the money and left him for dead. And then goes back to the jail and checks back in.
Oh my gosh.
And Jarvie's case remained unsolved for a long time, for at least another year. Although Skylar had been questioned in that death in 2003, they had not proven anything, but now they've charged him with all 3 murders. Also, while he's in prison, waiting his trial for the 3 murders, he gets charged with soliciting an inmate to kill Jennifer's father and her cousin Michael.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. He didn't want him to testify against him because Michael could testify about him killing John Jarvie. And then Jennifer's dad, I don't know exactly, but he probably had a lot that he could tell.
Oh my gosh. I wonder if Jennifer was in on that too.
Skylar's trial started October 2008, which was 2 years after Jennifer's conviction. And his attorney knew he probably didn't have a chance of not being convicted. So he admitted guilt in the murders, and he tries to use a defense based on his childhood trauma, which he says includes physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. And that very well could be true, but...
Sure, but you still can't go around killing folks.
Nope. And they were hoping for sympathy. And they were like, maybe the jury will not recommend the death penalty. But it only took a California jury 2 hours to find him guilty of all 3 murders, and they did recommend the death penalty.
Good. And that's surprising in California.
It really is. Then John F. Kennedy goes on trial, and he is also found guilty and given the death penalty.
Good.
I'll go ahead and say Alfonso Machain, he had cut a plea deal in exchange for his testimony because he was the key witness. He was there on the boat. So he pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter. He was given 20 years, and he'll be eligible for parole in 2026. Back to Skylar and John. You feel like, great, justice, there's been a little bit of justice done, right?
Right.
Well, this made my blood boil. They did get what they deserved, but in 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom put a moratorium on the death penalty. So for now, that's off the table.
Oh my gosh.
I just find that infuriating.
If anybody deserves it, those 2 do.
Absolutely. If anybody deserves it.
With that girl strapped to his lap.
Yeah, exactly. And there's more. While Skylar is in prison, he has been asked to be allowed to serve his time in a women's facility.
Oh, please tell me. Please tell me that's not going to happen.
He does not get that. I mean, the gall, right? He says he wants to be a woman, but he's not attracted to guys, and he just would feel more comfortable with the women. And thankfully, they have not allowed that. But he is being allowed to wear makeup, women's underclothing, and take hormones, all on the taxpayer's dime.
Oh, that makes me so mad.
I know. And he legally changed his name to Skylar Preciosa in 2015. And he wants to be called a she.
Oh my gosh. What is wrong with, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a whole lot to unpack there. He has also petitioned to have gender reassignment surgery. He thinks he deserves those rights. He was asked in an interview, does he think he's a good person? And he said, yeah, I am a good person. I'm nice to people. I treat people well. I just made bad decisions.
Oh my gosh. He is deluded.
Deluded. I think he's the most evil kind of person.
Yes.
Deplorable. What he has done is reprehensible. So after his trial, I mentioned that he and Jennifer did divorce. Their daughter and son now are in their, I guess they would be in their early 20s. I think the son will be 20 this coming year.
Okay. Poor kids.
I know. And they're being raised by her parents. There was trial in the test. There was testimony that the parents were raising them.
Okay.
You got to feel for them.
Yeah.
I mean, and the son never even knew his dad. I mean,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and or his mom.
Sure.
Poor kids. I mean, greed.
Yes. Entitlement. Greed.
But it's not just, greedy people, they covet what others have.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it becomes more of it, because I'm thinking, but how could you do something so horrible just out of greed? You could have at least shot them and not put them through that if it was just greed. And I really thought about that for a while. And I just thought, some people who are greedy, like you mentioned it, you just said the word entitlement. Mm-hmm. They feel like they're entitled to it. And they become envious of those people who have it and they don't.
Yes. Thought about that through the story too. I thought that they really were probably like jealous, like to their core of those people.
Yep. I think so too. Something that Tom has worked his butt off to get, and Skylar wants it without having to work for it. And he's looking at this person and envious. Envy, plain and simple. And I thought, well, maybe that envy is what you can chalk up to being behind some of his cruelty and callousness.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I just couldn't figure out. And that's all I could come up with. I looked up in Romans 1:29, where it's talking about the wrath of God that's going to come against the people who practice unrighteousness. Mm-hmm. And it says in Romans 1:29, they were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and maliciousness. Wow. And it goes on. And I can't think of anything that describes Skylar and Jennifer De Leon better than that.
He is the personification of that, those things. Gosh.
He really is. Skylar and Jennifer De Leon, they may be living in prison right now, not getting the death penalty, but one day they will face a just God, and then they will be the ones getting what is well deserved.
Yeah, that is so true. Those were some hard times.
Yeah, they were.
Now, I've got to be honest. Some of the songs and poems that Darlene and Melody come up with for me to read have made me question my participation in this program. And I thought going in that this was going to be one of those times. A sea shanty about murder. This is going to be fun. But I was wrong. After I got done reading through it, I rather enjoyed it. And although Mr. Whiting didn't use any biblical scripture, he did an outstanding job in referencing it. Verse 1 references God the Father, not only creating the waters on earth, but controlling how far they can go. Psalms 104, 5-9, and Jeremiah 5:22. Verse 2 references Jesus, walking on water, sleeping during the storm, and having authority over the winds and waves. Matthew 8:23 and 14:22. Verse 3 references the Holy Spirit hovering over the waters during creation. Genesis 1:2. And verse 4 references the Holy Trinity, a word used to represent the three forms used by one God to deliver us from every terrible thing. So you make sure you tell everybody you know, and a few people you don't, that in the midst of the storm, God is good. Till next time, goodbye.